So I'm Courtney Bidwell. I'm the director of the Kelley Institute for Social Impact, and I'm going to read off a quick introduction of Jessica because there are a lot of things we need to cover here before we dive into her story. She is a world-renowned transgender advocate, educator, and activist. Her experience as a transgender woman and parent led her to dedicate her life to spreading awareness and acceptance for gender non-conforming communities around the world. She is internationally considered one of the most foremost transgender speakers due to her dynamic, refreshingly honest speaking style, unique sense of humor, and signature Ask Me Anything Q&A sessions, one of those coming up at the end. Over the last several years, she's traveled over 1 million miles, visited 28 countries, presented over 1,000 times, and is overall helping to educate the general public about the transgender community. And she isn't finished yet. She's had the privilege of helping to educate tens of thousands of people about the many identities throughout the gender spectrum. She's also been working with teachers, professors, nurses, doctors, business leaders, and many others to help further the understanding of gender nonconforming communities. Jessica has collaborated with her colleagues from the University of Oxford, the Kinsey Institute, Michigan State University, and many others in order to help develop training and educational programs for the business and medical communities. Our sponsors and supporting offices for tonight's event are Kelley Student Experience, the Kelley Institute for Social Impact, and the Kinsey Institute. Before we get started, I want to let you know that you are welcome to post in the chat and Q&A throughout the presentation, and Jessica will spend some time answering questions at the end. We hope you enjoy hearing from her.
Thank you. It's my turn. Hi, you guys. Thank you for joining. I really appreciate this. As Courtney just said, my name is Jessica Lynn. I'm a Kinsey Institute Global Ambassador. As you know, you have Kinsey Institute at Indiana University there. I do work with the Kinsey Institute. And this special presentation we call Chasing Dreams. I'm on my world tour right now, coming from my living room in England. I do live in Britain. I live in a place called Sutton Caulfield, just outside of Birmingham, England. And today we're going to talk a little bit about different issues in the business community. You're going to learn quite a little bit different stuff, and we only have about an hour and 15 minutes, so I can't cram too much into your minds, but I want to open up your minds the very best I can. So I imagine that many, if not all of you, have flown. You know what it's like. You're anxious to get through the security, only to wait at the gate. Relieved to finally board, only to be bored again with less legroom. But eventually your plane comes out of the clouds and you're looking at a new city. Or maybe it's home. You're seeing it from the sky for the first time. You're looking down in a sea of stories, which you are only a drop. It humbles you, and while he may have never, ever flown, I don't think anyone could describe this effect more beautifully than Charles Dickens. Think about that as I said that. Charles Dickens, written 100 and something years ago. A wonderful fact to reflect upon, that every human creature is constituted to be that profound secret and mystery to every other. A solemn consideration, when I enter a great city by night, that every one of those darkly clustered houses encloses its own secret. Think about that as I'm talking about that. That every beating heart in the hundreds of thousands of breasts there is, in some of its imagining, a secret to the heart nearest us. Think about this. As you fly across the countries, you fly across the United States, you guys are in the United States, as I fly across Africa to South Africa, you look down at all those millions and millions of homes, the automobiles, the cities, the towns. It is just such a giant, beautiful, blue, beautiful planet. And there's so much area. Do you ever just look out the window and you just look out there and you ever just think, and you look at all of those cities, all of those towns, all of those people, and does it ever just make you think about that? Do you ever just sit there? Do you ever wonder? Do you ever wonder who are those people? Does this ever come into your mind? You're looking at all those people, those airplanes, from the airplane across the skies. Do you ever wonder, who are they? Who are those millions and millions of people you're staring at? Who are they? What are their secrets? What are those millions of people's secrets? What are their stories? Think about this. I want you to wrap this number around your head. 7,800,000,000. That is how many people there is in the world in 2021. Think about this number for a second. For me to get to that number, I would have to start counting 1, 2, 3, 4. It would take me 250 years nonstop counting to get to that number of 7,800,000,000. And that is how many different stories there are in the world right now. Think about that number. Just wrap your head around that. Think about that. And out of that 7,800,000,000, no two of us are the same. We're not just our genetic makeup, our environment, events in our lives. These things do so much more to shape us. They write our stories. You can clone my DNA or find my long lost twin, but there will never be another me, and there will never be another you. Think about that for 1 second. Please just wrap your head around this. Out of that big giant globe that we're just flying over, there's 195 different countries, 4,300 different religions, 6,500 different languages. This is what makes up a word we call diversity. Everybody is different. Everybody's unique. Everybody has a different journey. Everybody has their own path. It is such a beautiful world. Beautiful, beautiful word. And the beauty of the world lies in the diversity of its people. This is one of the things that makes the world such a gorgeous place, is no two of us are the same. You may sit in your classroom, you look across the classroom, everybody's different color hair, glasses, short, tall. Everybody is different, and that's what makes the world a beautiful, beautiful place. But a word that comes along with diversity is another word called discrimination. And what is discrimination? What is it to be prejudiced? Very few people would readily admit it, but it's innate in all of us. Every day we make assumptions about people we don't know. We make assumptions constantly. We hope to be understood as unique, the protagonist of our own story. But when we form an opinion about someone based only on a trait that they share with someone else, we are not treating them as an individual with their own story. However common these beliefs may be, they cease to be benign when they influence our decisions. They lead to discrimination. This is what's happened, and it's happened forever, and it will continue happening. Who is it decides what is right or wrong? Who decides what is normal? Think about that for one moment. The discrimination has been around forever, for generations, across countries, across the whole world, and as long as this time has been around, there's been discrimination against people because of the skin color. You know what's happened in America over the number of years. It's happened here in England. It's happened around the world. Because of skin color, people have been treated horrifically because of the color of their skin. I don't show most of the horrific pictures, but this is what has happened for generations. It's discrimination, and it is still happening now in 2021 because of the color of their skin. Think about that for one moment. Now, I bet you don't realize this, but red hair. Discrimination against red hair people for generations. To me, red hair is absolutely beautiful. It's a stunning color. I think red hair is so beautiful. But what do they do with people with red hair? For generations after generations, they would take people and burn them alive or drown them because of the color hair they're born with. This is discrimination just because of the color hair some people are born with. Think about that for one moment. Now, how about left-handed? How many of you guys listening right here are left-handed? About 10% of the world's population is left-handed. Not a lot, about 10%. It's more than average, but you know what I'm saying. But this is my mom. She was born here in 1934 in England, which is why I live here. I'm a dual citizen. She was born in 1934. And when she was a young girl and she started coloring and writing things, she started writing with her left hand. She went to school. The teacher said, "You're not allowed to write with your left hand." They would tie her hand behind her back and hit her with a yardstick. They said, "You have to write with your right hand. It is wrong to be left-handed." This is what has gone on for generations, and it is still happening. In the United States, where you guys live right now, there's churches and religions that say, "Stop being left-handed." Can you imagine being a child? Mom and dad belong to this church. You start drawing and writing when you're a young child, and because you write with your left-handed, they believe that there's so much evidence that left-handers will burn in all eternity forever because they're writing with their left hand. Please think about that for one moment. That is the discrimination because people are born left-handed. Now, here's another one that not too many people know about. Intersex, right? I work with the Kinsey Institute. You guys are business students, but these are people that have been born intersex. It's about 1 to 2% of the general population around the world, and it could be sometimes you're born with both genitalia, it could be born with a penis and a uterus. And this is my very closest friend in America. Her name is Peggy Jones. She was born in 1949. And she came out of her mother's womb in Oklahoma. The doctor looked at her, studied her, and she had both a penis and a vagina. The doctor was really, really stunned and said, "You know what? Her penis is larger than her vagina. We are going to pronounce her a boy." They did 4 surgeries on her by the time she was 5 years old to fix her genitalia to make her a, quote, normal boy. They pumped her full of testosterone. They forced her to live life as a boy. Well, she didn't like being a boy. She wanted to play with girl things. So what did they do to fix her when she was about 9 years old? 9 years old, 1958, University of Oklahoma Medical Center. They strapped her to a chair, a table, and did electric shock therapy on her when she was 9 years old because being intersex was considered wrong. That is what we call discrimination. And as I said, it's been going on for generations after generations. People have been discriminated against from language, from gender, from physical ability, ethnic origin. It is still happening here today. This is what has gone on for as long as we can remember. And as I said, it is still going on right now in the year 2021. But today we're going to talk a little bit about a specific a specific group in this big conundrum of words, and that is the LGBTQ plus community. And actually, we're going to talk about one letter of it. We're going to talk about the T, about the transgender community. And we're going to help you. I want to spend some time, hopefully open up your mind to talk a little bit about, you guys are business students, and I want you guys to understand a little bit about the discrimination and how to become more accepting towards the transgender community in the workplace. Whether you own your own business, whether you're a manager, whether you just work in a clothing store, it all requires just a little bit of openness. Basically what it is equality, treating everybody equal. As education is the very best way to help end discrimination, so this is what we're going to do. This is a quick story that I'm going to show you. This is me in 2013. This was the peak of after I transitioned about 3 or 4 years. This is my favorite hair color. I was really skinny. I was going to the gym constantly. I was going to tanning salons. I owned a clothing boutique in a little place called Grover Beach, California. I was about 47, 48 years old, something around there. I can't remember. 2013, right? And I looked pretty good, didn't I? As I said, I owned this little cute blue clothing boutique. I had transitioned in 2010, 2009, 2010, and these pictures were taken about a week after the worst news I had ever received in my life. You're going to hear about that in a little bit. But to make myself feel better, I owned a clothing boutique. I used to go to different locations. I used to go to other stores and explore their stuff. And one of my favorite stores in the world I went to was a store called Marshall's. You guys know Marshall's, TJ Maxx, Marshalls, and it's very, very similar. And there was one in Grover Beach where I used to go to, and I walk in there, everybody knew me, this is what I look like, and they'd say, "Hi, Jessica." I'd walk in there, and I walk to the store, and I loved the store because they sold a lot of Free People. Free People is one of my favorite clothing. And I walk through the store and I pick up items, and I really enjoyed it. And I walk in, people's like I said, "Hi, Jessica, what's going on?" There were a couple of people who would come to my store, and I go and I take my clothing and I go to the place to go try it on. Well, this lady looks at me and she goes, "Well, how many you got there?" And I said, "3." She goes, "Well, you're going to have to use the men's dressing room." And I looked at her and I said, "Excuse me?" She goes, "Well, you know." I was irate. I grabbed the 3, I walked into the room, and I sat there and I was shaking. I was irate. I mean, like I said, would you misgender me here? Seriously. I was shaking. I was crying. I was devastated. I walked out, threw the clothes at her, and walked out. The manager caught that. And the manager came out and saw me and talked to me at my car, and I was in tears. And I explained what had happened to me, the discrimination I had faced about 3 days before, that you're going to learn in a short little bit. She sat there, she hugged me, she worked with me. She did not leave it alone. She came back, she called the manager above her, and they started working. They ended up training the whole West Coast of Marshalls on that one incident to help make people more accepting to the transgender community. This lady took it upon herself. She didn't know I was transgender. Somebody said, "Isn't she beautiful? She's transgender." So she took it upon herself. She used her religious beliefs to discriminate. This is what happened to me, like I said, not long ago. It was devastating. That's just one aspect of what's gone on in the community. And to me, like I said, the personal journeys are some of the very, very best. This happened to me, and that's what I wanted to explain. And this was one of the reasons what pushed me into advocacy. This is one of the reasons why I do what I do. So now the little next exercise, I want you guys to do me a favor. I can't see anybody on here, so I hope you're all listening, and I hope you're listening pretty well. I want you to do me a favor, and I want you to close your eyes. I want you to close your eyes and imagine alongside me. I want you to close your eyes and envision yourself as a very, very young child. I want you to picture and imagine along with me. Think of yourself around 5, 6, maybe 7 years old. Think about how you felt when you were this age. If you currently identify as a woman, please imagine that everywhere you go, your parents, your brothers, sisters, teachers, friends, everyone around you treats you as you are a little boy. Please imagine that with me. You go to your best friend's house and you both start playing with her dolls. You play tea party. You go outside and play hopscotch, but her parents stop you both and demand that you cannot play with her. You should be outside riding skateboards and bicycles, playing football with the other boys. Think about that. You're expected to act, dress as a boy. Every single one of them refers to you using male pronouns and nicknames. He, him, his, little man, Buster, Champ, or son. Even though you know in your heart and your mind you are a girl, everyone around you insists you are a little boy and demand that you act like one. You do everything you can to push your thoughts aside and think maybe one day, someday, this nightmare will all end and they will finally understand how you feel. Please imagine that with me for that few minutes. Think about that. Now, if you currently identify as a man, please imagine that everywhere you go, the closest people in your life, your mom, your dad, your brothers, your sisters, everyone around you treats you as if you are a little girl. Every single one of them refers to you using female pronouns and nicknames. She, her, sweetie, girly, or darling. Imagine yourself when you're 4, 5, 6 years old, and you come downstairs in your cowboy outfit. You're carrying your skateboard, your Action Man, your plastic soldiers. Your parents yell at you and tell you to put that stuff away and get ready. Those toys are for little boys, and now you're late for ballet practice. Even though you know in your heart and mind that you are a boy, everyone around you insists you're a girl. Every single one of them demand that you act like one. Can you imagine that? please. You get out of bed every morning, you look around the closet, you do not see anything that you want to wear. Absolutely nothing you would like to wear throughout the day. Every piece of clothing makes you feel uncomfortable and upset when you have to put them on. Think about that. Your parents yell at you to hurry up and get dressed, so you pick out the clothes that are the least uncomfortable to make you feel more like yourself. You hop on the bus in the morning and the kids are laughing at you and teasing at you and saying mean things like, "What are you, gay or something? Why do you dress like that?" Other kids ignore you. You feel so isolated and so alone. You get to school and you're last to line up by gender and you constantly get yelled at for where you go. During lunch break, the other kids group together by activity, but you have a really hard time choosing. When you do what you want to, it results in everyone teasing you and making fun of you. You feel so sad, frustrated, confused, and yet so alone. Night after night, day after day, you're begging and pray God to fix you. All you ask is that when you wake up, you will be your true self. But it never happens. Imagine you're 14, 15 years old. Over the past few years, your body's in changing ways that are extremely uncomfortable. You start to have feelings and fantasies. You're so confused because it feels so good, but so uncomfortable. You ask your friends if they feel the same way, but nobody else does. At the same time, everybody's hooking up and they all start dating and it feels so confusing. Sometimes you feel you should just hook up. And besides, you don't like to be alone, but you just don't want to be called gay anymore. And it's just so confusing. You wish that somebody could understand where you're coming from and help you explain this, but nobody can. And it just feels so damn confusing. You don't even talk to your parents about it, as over the years you have heard them say things like how transgender people are freaks. How they say they would never let their own child do that. You're scared to death of how they will react if you tell them. And life is hard enough as it is. You don't want to risk your parents rejecting you. You are not sure you can handle that type of pain. Every single day starts to feel like a battle. And you are exhausted, you are tired, you're feeling increasingly depressed. You do anything for the pain to go away. You drink, drugs, cut yourself, anything you can to take this pain away. Please take a moment and think of yourself, how you are feeling right now. Can you imagine that? Please imagine yourself in that position. So when you're ready, open your eyes and please, the chat box is open. I want you to tell me, what are your feelings as you come and as you listen to this story? How did you feel? Did it resonate with you? Please feel comfortable, chat. I can't hear anybody here, but how do you feel? Do you feel anger? Do you feel frustration? Do you feel depression? Do any of these things pop up to you? Anybody? What feelings are you feeling when you feel this? Despair, absolutely. When I speak to a lot of people across the classrooms, when I do this in front of the students, a lot of young men say, I want to kill myself. I want to commit suicide because that's how bad it feels. How would you feel if this was your consistent experience in the world? Please feel free to write anything you want down. Please. How would you feel? This is really, somebody wrote that they have really religious strict parents. Guilt, shame, okay? This is some of the stuff that we feel. Hopelessness, invisibility, okay? Think about that. I feel people aren't seeing or validating me for who I am. Absolutely. Based on your experience imagining this, what might be some of the hard parts of being transgender? What are some of the hard things about it? There's a lot of different things about it, it's a very, very difficult thing to do. What might be some examples of places where story that could have been allied, could have intervened or provided support? The parents could have provided gender neutral clothing. The teachers could have come in and taught about gender, through the classrooms. And I know this is a younger experience and I know you guys are in university level, but I kind of want you to experience what it feels like to be a transgender individual. Not all transgender people feel like this, but a good large portion of. stuff do, because the transgender community is a unique and it's a very interesting community. It's a beautiful community. And the transgender community is a very small community. It only makes up of about 0.6% of the world's population. We truly do believe it's larger, but because of the discrimination, people don't feel comfortable coming out and identifying as transgender. Just like that young person's parents, their parents are freaks, or that transgender people are freaks. That's why a lot of people don't feel comfortable coming out. And in the United States of America, where you guys are right now, the transgender population is roughly 1.4 million people of transgender people. But along comes with transgender people is transgender discrimination. There is one hell of a lot of discrimination towards the transgender community. There's a lot of transgender discrimination at home. I know people that will kick out of their home at 10, 11, 12 years old. I know a young boy that was living under bridges at 12 years old because he came out wanting to identify gender non-conforming, gender fluid, and this was a while ago, and parents kicked him out when he was 12 years old. Think about this. This is the discrimination at home. One of my closest friends in America, in the world, she's in America. Her mom, when she came out at 16 years old, kicked her out of the house. She came and lived with us so I can help her, with her transition. Her parents finally accepted her and came around, but this is the discrimination at home. There's people that I know that have been brutally beat up by mom and dad because of the discrimination. Now, there's discrimination at school. You guys are at a pretty damn good school there at IU, but there's been school discrimination. There's people that have been picketed. Go into school and they got people picketing your existence at the school. There's a guy in North Carolina that proposed a bill to inspect children's genitalia when they went to the bathroom. He wanted somebody to look underneath their pants or underneath their skirt to make sure they had a penis or a vagina. Think about this for a minute. This was a number of years ago, but he wanted to check children's genitalia before they went to the public restroom. There's discrimination in healthcare. I work a great deal here in Britain with the NHS. I do a lot of education and training with them. We talk about terminology, how to accept people. If I go into the doctor's and I need stitches for my foot, the doctor has no right to ask me if I have a vagina or a penis, unless he's going to take me out on a date. But that has no bearing on my foot. But this is some of the discrimination that transgender people face in healthcare. But today we're talking about transgender discrimination in the workplace. And what is discrimination? What is it? Discrimination is making a distinction between a person against a person or thing based on a group, class, or category they belong to, rather than basing any action on individual merit. A simple distinction between prejudice and discrimination is that prejudice is to do with attitude, discrimination is to do with action. This is what it is. Discrimination is the actual physical doing something because towards like somebody like myself, to the Black community, we're a part of a minority group, and this is what happens. But why is there discrimination? Why is there prejudice? And the reasons for being prejudiced vary, right? There's stereotyping. A person's upbringing may cause them to be prejudiced. If parents have prejudice of their own, there's a chance that these opinions will be passed on to the next generation. One bad experience with a person from a particular group can cause a person to think of all the people from that group in the same way. This is called stereotyping, and that could lead to prejudice. The media has a power of influence on people in the 21st century, and it can often be responsible for promoting stereotype of a particular group. Scapegoating is another example of a specific type of prejudice. A person or group can be blamed for the sins or wrongs of another person or group. For example, in 1930s Nazi Germany, Jews were made scapegoats for a country's economic difficulties. Victims of particular kind of bullying may go on to become bullies themselves. In the same way a person has been victim or prejudiced, there is a chance that they will hold similar opinions about others. And most often, prejudice is based on ignorance. And what is the solution? The solution is education. But many people choose to remain ignorant as their prejudice often make them feel superior. So as I said, I'm a Kinsey Institute Global Ambassador. I traveled the world speaking about what it means to be transgender. And when I signed with Kinsey, they said two things you don't do, Jessica. You don't talk political and you don't talk religion. But about 2 years ago, I was in Thailand. I did a keynote in Thailand, and Justin Garcia, the new director of Kinsey Institute, came and saw me there, and we talked a little bit about it. He said, you can't do your story without talking political. There's so much going on towards the transgender community in the political thing right now. You can't do it. So I do talk a little bit about it now. I am not going left versus right, but in the last several years, transgender people have been discriminated one hell of a lot against from the Trump administration. Again, I'm not saying left versus right. I'm not saying anything there. Please, please understand. But these are some of the things that have happened in the last several years. In 3 tweets, Trump bans people from military service. He blamed it on costs when more and more studies have proven that it is not the truth. Trump administration reverses health protections for transgender people. The Supreme Court overturned that. So according to Trump, I can go into the hospital with a knife sticking in my chest. And what they wanted to do was to use religious freedom to say, I don't like transgender people. I don't want to fix them. This is the proposals that have come from the Trump administration, the discrimination. The Trump administration lays attack on transgender people facing homelessness. Ben Carson, he passed the rules that no, transgender people are not allowed into homeless shelters because they made it that it was allowed to discriminate against them. And troubling FBI reports show that anti-LGBT hate crimes have soared under Trump's administration. And again, I'm not going after Trump, but this is kind of stuff that has been going on. This just happened this last week. This guy last week, he's part of Florida, he was in Congress, and what did he say? Republican congressman sparked anger when he suggested transgender people are an offense to God. Think about this. This is discrimination at the very top of the government. We are an offense to God. Think about this. This is what is going on. But that discrimination trickles down into business because more than 1 in 4 transgender people have lost a job due to bias. This has happened to a lot of people that I know have lost jobs. Just recently, a friend of mine in California lost her job because she's transgender. And more than 3/4 have experienced some form of workplace discrimination. As I said, it happens a great deal. Refusal to hire, privacy violations, harassment, and even physical violence on the job are very, very common occurrences and are experienced at even high rates by transgender people of color. It's horrific the way the Black community is treated, especially in the transgender community. It is horrific. Extreme levels of unemployment and poverty lead 1 in 8 to become involved in underground economies, such as sex work, drug work, in order to survive. So as I said, these are just some of the touches of what it is to be transgender in the workplace. These are just a couple of things. But as I said, it's very, very difficult to there's a statement that says it's hard to hate someone whose story you know. So what we're going to do for the next half an hour, 40 minutes, we're going to tell you a little bit about what it means to be transgender through a personal journey. So I travel the world. I tell my personal journey. It's a very, very powerful story. This speaking tour is called Chasing Dreams. And for the next 45 minutes, half an hour or so, you're going to hear my journey. I am but one of the many millions of people across the United States, one of the many millions across the world. This is my story and my story only. And I said it's a very, very powerful story. I've actually had some people get upset and leave during my presentation because of the discrimination and the stuff that I faced, right? So I'm asking you to bear witness and listen to, a little bit about my life and my story. So I was born Jeffrey Allen Butterworth, January 29th, 1965, and I was brought into this world as a cute, adorable baby boy. My parents were English immigrants. They came to the United States and started raising a family. I was born, I had a little brother, I had two older brothers, and I had an older sister. And I came from a really, really warm, beautiful, beautiful family. I had very, very comfortable. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked all day. And as a young child, as young as I can remember, at maybe 3, maybe 4 years old, I was not comfortable being a boy. At this age, I wanted to look, act, dress, and live as a girl. And this did not make sense. This is 1968, 1969. Who the hell does that? Why do I want to be a girl? My mom was a Christian woman. She said, Jeff, if you pray hard enough, God will move mountains. So I was at my hands and knees begging God night after night, day after day to turn me into a girl. And I would cry myself to sleep just night after night, day after day. I would go to school with my very best friend. Here I am in 1970, I'm 5 years old. I was a cute, adorable little boy. And I would go to my school with my very best friend, Michelle. After school, we'd go to her house, and we'd play dolls, and we'd play tea party, we'd play dress up, we played house. At that age, I wanted to be Michelle. Like I said, this is 1970. Who the hell thinks that way? That did not make sense. But according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, most children have a stable sense of their gender identity by the age of 4, which I did. And I'm praying to God night after night, day after day to turn me into a girl, and it's not happening. And it's becoming harder and harder and harder. Now I'm not saying God turn me into a girl. I'm saying, God, you cannot turn me into a girl. Take these goddamn feelings of wanting to be a girl away from me. It doesn't make sense to a child at 4, 5, 6 years old. But the feelings didn't go away. They just grew stronger and stronger and stronger. And life went on, became harder and harder and harder. When I was about 7 years old here, and I learned the difference between boys and girls. Boys have a penis and girls haven't. If I got rid of that penis, I'd be a girl. So at 7 years old, I snuck a razor blade into bed and physically tried to remove my penis. I didn't get too far, as you can imagine. I physically tried to remove my penis. I didn't get too far. So I'm doing different activities now, doing anything to stop me thinking about wanting to be a girl. I'm collecting animals. I lived on a farm, playing with my dogs, my chickens, my cats, anything I could. Then I started painting. And I started painting beautiful paintings at 7, 8, 9 years old. When I have a painting in front of me, I'm not thinking about wanting to be a girl. And I used it as a coping mechanism. And I had paintings all over my mom and dad's house, and I had paintings all over their friend's house. So when I'm painting that eagle for 2, 3, 4 hours, I'm not thinking about wanting to be a girl. And I'm becoming a damn good artist. I painted this when I was 11 years old in one 6-hour sitting. For that 6, 7 hours I was there, I was smelling that ocean, I was listening to those waves crash, and I was not thinking about wanting to be a girl. It was my greatest coping mechanism in the world. It's very, very common in the older LGBT world. It really is. But as I said, my parents were English immigrants, and at a young age, they introduced me and my brothers to the game of soccer. Here in England, we call it football. They would drag me to the field Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturday morning to Sunday morning, and I really didn't care to play. But then when I found that I was on the field for 90 minutes, that became my next greatest coping mechanism. And I started obsessing with it, getting up before school and kicking the ball against the garage door and practicing, playing at lunchtime, playing at recess, playing after school until 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. And it became the greatest coping mechanism in the world. And it's a very, very common thing with older LGBT people like myself. And I'm sure you guys have heard of Caitlyn Jenner. But when Caitlyn Jenner was Bruce Jenner became the world's greatest athlete. That was Caitlyn Jenner's coping mechanism. She obsessed with sports, won more gold medals than anybody else in world history. This is what some of us did. This is a friend of mine, Janae Kroc. She is a weightlifter. She won major Olympic gold medals. She's got world records. She too did it to fight her feeling about being transgender. Here's Billie Jean King. She's not transgender, but she was one of the world's greatest tennis players of all time. She did it because she was a lesbian. That was her coping mechanism. And I have a friend named Christian Beck. She became a Navy SEAL. She's one of the toughest there is in the military. And she became a Navy SEAL. When she retired, she transitioned. And this is what she did. She got ridiculed massive amount from the American government because of what you did. And this is what I did. I played soccer. I'm 15 years old here. I became a damn good player. I was offered scholarships and I was asked to try out for the 1984 Olympic Games when I was 15 years old. That's what kind of player I was. But again, it was a coping mechanism because when I was this age, I wanted to look, act, dress, and live as a girl. And I couldn't talk about it to anybody. It just did not make sense. And life went on. And I discovered alcohol at a very young age. And I started drinking at a young age. My elder friends could be able to buy beer. And that became the next grade and coping mechanism. This is what I did. Just going through life, playing soccer and drinking. And when you're 15, 16, 17 years old, boys and girls start dating. I wasn't particularly interested in girls. I'm in high school, and I had crushes on almost every one of my friends. Everyone except for Alberto, right? Good player, but he was a bit of an ass. But when I was 17 years old, I met a young girl named Barbara. Barbara was 15 years old, beautiful, kind, quiet, had the golden sense of humor. Me and her became very, very best of friends. I felt comfortable with her and I started hanging around with her. And after a little while, me and Barbara started a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. I truly, truly loved to be with her. Didn't understand myself. I came out to her when she was 15 years old. She came back and says, you know what, Jeff? I totally, totally love you. I fully support you and I accept you for who you are. This is 1982. The only word we knew was transvestite, but she said, I love you and I accept you for who you are. So 1982 turns in 1983. When you saw Jeff, you saw Barbara. When you saw Barbara, you saw Jeff. 1983, she didn't like to see me dressed up, and she accepted it every once in a while. It was very difficult for her. 1983 turns into 1984. Everything is going fantastic, and maybe one day these feelings will go away. So on Christmas 1984, I bought her a beautiful diamond ring, and on Christmas morning 1984, I proposed to her. And she just lost it saying, oh my God, Jeff, yes, I totally, totally love you. Absolutely. So now the year is 1985. I have the world at my fingertips. I have somebody that loves me and accepts me. I had a successful sign painting business. I turned my artwork into sign painting. I was a very young entrepreneur. I started my own sign painting business when I was 18 years old. Again, another coping mechanism. I obsessed with it. I had a very successful sign painting business. 18, 19, 20 years old. I had 10, 15 people working for me, and I was doing really, really well. I was the envy of every guy in the San Fernando Valley. I had a big truck, I had a beautiful girlfriend, but I'm 20 years old. And it was throwing a wedge in our relationship because I wanted to become a girl more and more and more. And I didn't understand it. This is 1985, and I had no idea, no understanding. And I finally put a wedge between us, and me and Barbara split up for about a week. I go to Los Angeles. I'm trying to figure out who I am. We get back together, and she sat there crying, saying, I'm not a lesbian, but I accept you for who you are, and I love you that much, Jeff. We get back together, and we start planning our lives, and it's Christmas time. It's Christmas time, December of 1985. I have everything in the world going for me. I have somebody that loves me and accepts me for who I am. I'm 20 years old. She's 19 years old, and everything in the world is going fantastic. It's Christmas time. It's a Thursday morning, December 5th, and I drop her off at work, and I go home, and I'm typing up an estimate. Back then, we had typewriters. And at 12 o'clock, she calls me, saying, Jeff, I got off work early. Come pick me up. So I pick her up in my monster truck, and we go to this little place in Racine, and we have lunch. We're talking about Christmas and our wedding. We leave there. It's a beautiful, beautiful sunny day. We're rocking out. I got the music cranking. We pass a store on the right-hand side. We're going to go Christmas shopping there tonight. And we turn right down the street called Winnetka. We're driving northbound. Beautiful, beautiful day. There's a guy hanging Christmas lights. And we come to this intersection. As we come to this intersection, a lady high on heroin and drunk ran the red light at 65 miles an hour, broadsiding us. We rolled 2 times in a moving truck like this, hit us head on head, where we rolled another 5 times. You can imagine how horrific that car accident was. That's a picture of me on the stretcher being put into the helicopter. During that helicopter flight, I died several times. I have a bone on my chest where they broke my sternum. I broke my neck, and my jaw was completely shattered. So you can imagine how horrific this car accident was. Airlifted to Northridge Hospital. I'm in a coma for several days. I'm 20 years old. Never have I ever seen a dead body before. Never been to a funeral before. The next time I got to see Barbara, she's lying in her white coffin, in her white dress. I am begging her to wake up. My mouth is wired shut. They pulled me off a firm. We buried her in Christmas of 1985. You can imagine how fucking dark my life came from that moment on. My life turned to an absolute living hell. I drank and drank. Cocaine became my drug of choice. I would snort it, I would smoke it. I did anything I could to numb this pain. I hated life. I attempted suicide 14, 16, 18 times, slit my wrist, swallowed pills. I just didn't know how to do it. To fix myself, I probably slept with 30, 40, maybe 50 different women, not understanding this, right? 1986, went into 1987. The lady that hit us ended up getting a 2-year prison sentence. She did a total of 6 months. That was vehicular manslaughter back in 1985. So now we're at June of 1987, about a year and a half after my car accident. And a friend of mine calls me and goes, "Hey, Jeff, let's go to your parents' house." It was prearranged. I had no idea. And he picks me up in Southern California, in Los Angeles. We drive up the Central Valley of California, where my parents had since retired. And I get up to my mom and dad's, and I go to sleep on their couch for a few hours. And after a few hours, my mom wakes me. She goes, "Hey, Jeff, I want to have a talk with you." So me and my mom walk down. We sit down on this rock, and we start talking. And my mom turns to me. She says, "You know, me and your dad know you're drinking too much, and we want you to stop." Not. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but you're frozen.
Give me 1 second, okay? I'm not hanging up on it. You can hear me still?
Yes, and we can see your screen too.
Oh, you can you see me?
Yes,
Hold on.
good.
Okay, hold on. I'm sorry. I've just got one more thing. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
There it is. Sorry. So I came out. So I'm sitting on the. You can hear me now, right?
Yes, you're good. We can see you and hear you.
Okay. So I'm sitting on that rock, and me and my mom are talking, and my mom turns to me and she says, "You know, me and your dad want you to stop drinking. We know you're drinking too much." And I argued with her. I said, "I drink, Mom, but I don't drink too much." And she said, "No, we know you're using drinking, we know you're using drugs, and we know why." I said, "Barbara's been dead. You have to understand that." She said, "No." That moment on the rock of June of 1987, my mom turned to me. She said, "Me and your dad know you're drinking. We know you're using drugs, because we know you want to be a girl. We've known ever since you were 3, 4 years old." I get up from that rock, I yelling at her, I'm pissed, I'm irate, and I'm screaming at her, and I walk away, and I sat there and I cried for a little while. I come back up, she's sitting on the rock, I'm going, "Why, Mom? Why didn't you do anything? Why didn't you tell me?" She goes, "Calm down and I'll tell you." She said, "We plan on transitioning you when you're 5 years old. Your dad had put a request in from work to move, and during that move, we moved from 4 boys and 1 girl to 3 boys and 2 girls." I said, "Why didn't you? Why? My life would have been so much easier." She said, "Well, there was a doctor at UCLA in 1969 that we took you to see him. His name was Dr. John Money. He was considered one of the very best doctors in the world on transgender issues. He wrote the book on transgender issues. But Dr. John Money's theory was it's nature versus nurture. The way you raise a child is the way this child's going to become." So Dr. John Money convinced my mom and dad when I was 4 years old, "He's a boy, immerse him in football, in baseball, it'll cure him." So my parents took the advice of Dr. John Money, moved me away from his shell, and immersed me in sports, in baseball and in soccer, and did exactly what Dr. John Money told him to do. Well, for those that don't know, Dr. John Money's very, very famous for a very famous case, for a case of 2 boys. And when these 2 boys were born in August after I was, the same year, they had a problem during circumcision. And on one of the little boys, they accident lost his penis. They had no idea what to do. It was burned off. They had no idea what to do. So Dr. John Money came in and says, "Let's use this child as a social experiment. It is nature versus nurture." He advised the parents to be renamed David as Brenda and be raised as a girl. So the parents took the advice of Dr. John Money and raised little David Raymer as a girl. Well, David hated being a girl. David wanted to play boy things, but was forced to live life as a girl. Had a very, very tough time. Finally, at 14, 15 years old, detransitioned. His parents told him what happened, and finally went on a detransition. Well, Dr. John Money continued telling the world that his case was a huge success. He wrote paper after paper saying that it was a fantastic success, even though he hadn't talked to them in years. And he lied. David Raymer had such a hard time that he finally put a shotgun in his mouth and took his own life. And his twin brother had killed her a little bit before that. So I came out to my parents in 1987. I came out wanting to look, act, dress, and live as a girl, but come out sexually was still one more huge hurdle, and I wasn't ready to do that yet. This was 1987. I did not understand. 1987, there was no literature out there. Do I transition? Yes, no. And I went through a few years. I had no idea what to do. But that was the last time I needed a coping mechanism, and right then and there was the last time I ever took a sip of alcohol or any type of drug. I've been 100% sober ever since that moment of the rock in 1987. But in 1987, there was no word as transgender. The only word we knew was transvestite. And transvestite is considered now in the community a very negative word. It's considered cross-dresser. It's another term for it. And that's not what I was. I wanted to be a woman with a vagina. Then I found the word transsexual, which means that somebody like myself that wants to transition completely opposite gender. And that's what it meant. That's what I was. But again, it's a very negative term in the community. Then I found the word transgender, and I found out that there's more people like me. Everybody identifies a little bit different. Facebook alone has 64 different terms for this word transgender. The transgender community is a very big, beautiful, and diverse community. Just like you may have a twin sister, you have different tastes in clothing, food, music, men, women. Everybody is different, and that is the same thing with the transgender community. No two of us are alike, and I cannot put that into your head enough. It's also a very fluid community. People do change. Nothing is set in stone, either sex and gender. Two things that are not set in stone. I know people that had no idea that they were transgender until they're 40, 50, 60 years old. So when I came out to my parents, there's no literature. I had no idea. Do I do it? Yes, no, yes, no. Now we're getting to the late 80s, and the computer's coming out. Starting to do it, starting to work towards it. Moved in with one of my brothers, started making a lot of money to do my transition. Started planning on it. Started planning I needed to raise $20,000, $30,000 to do my transition. Well, I'm a contractor. I'm starting to move toward buying clothes, shipping them to my mom and dad's. And one day I'm in a lumber yard, and this young girl behind the counter, she goes, "Hey, Jeff." Me and her start talking. I knew her brother. She goes, "Want to hang out?" And I said, "Yeah." I started hanging out with her. The second day we hung out, I came out to her. She goes, "I don't care. I'll help you transition." She became my friend. She'd go to the mall with me, buy clothes, take pictures, and started planning on me. But we experimented around. I had sex with her a few times. I wasn't sure. I'm trying to figure myself out. I'm still playing, and understanding. I was planning on my transition. And then one day she called me. She goes, "Jeff, we need to talk. I'm pregnant." I go meet her, and she said, "Never in a million years will I have an abortion. I'm the farthest thing from my mind." After a long conversation, she says, "I know you want to become a woman. You go live in your mom and dad's house. I will raise this child on my own." Really debated about it. I said, "No. She knows about me. She's accepted me. Cannot let a child come in this world without a father." Me and Rachel got married March 1991. Had our first little baby boy, Jeffrey Daniel Butterworth. The most adorable, adorable little boy in the world. I was the perfect father. Came home, played with my boy. I was also the kind of father that did not want my child to be raised by a babysitter, so he had his mother stay home with him. I wasn't the greatest husband because I rarely, rarely slept with her, but I was the perfect father. Working 6 days a week, coming home early, and rarely slept with her. But she got pregnant a second time, and we ended up having a second child. Bradley was a difficult child to give birth to. She was 7 months pregnant with Bradley when her and Jeffrey had another car accident. Long story short, he cost me a giant chunk of money, and I'm working constantly. I have two beautiful little boys at home and a stay-at-home mom, and I am working my ass off to make ends meet. The Northridge earthquake happens. We're living in Southern California, be closer to the valley so I can be closer to my work and be closer to my boys. And now the relationship between me and their mother is falling farther and farther apart. Coming home, we're in separate bedrooms because the relationship isn't there. And finally, one day I come home. She says, "You know what, Jeff? F you." Takes the two boys, moves out of the house, and files for divorce. Did not fight her, did not argue with her. The relationship wasn't there. We were there only together for the kids. During this divorce, the judge ordered joint legal custody, legal and physical custody, but the judge ordered me to pay child support, and I doubled her child support. And I had a good relationship with her. I'm seeing her every other day. I have my children every other day, and things are moving along. She's very open and accepting. I'm experimenting around with my sexuality, and things are moving along. And so now we're at Christmas Eve, 1998. Things happen. We ended up back in bed together. She ended up getting pregnant a third time. Put my transition aside, she's more accepting me than ever now. We get back together. We have our little baby Curtis, little Curtis Russell Butterworth. Curtis comes into our life. We buy a small house in Reseda. She's more open and accepting to me than ever. We have our third little child. We buy a small house in Reseda. The economy's starting to climb. We said, we got to get the hell out of here. Sold our house. We moved up the coast to a place called Santa Maria, California. We ended up putting our money together and buying a brand new house. The day we closed escrow, she called her boss and quit her job and says, "I want to go back to school full time." And I said, that's fine. I have three boys, massive mortgage payment, 2 car payments. She said, "We'll do it together as a family." Well, as you can imagine, the relationship started to fall farther and farther apart because I'm never home. I'm constantly working. Finally, I come home one day. She says, "You know what, Jeff? Fuck you again." But this time she takes her youngest son, Curtis, and moves out of the house. She moved 100 miles south. I said, "You do not split up children." She said, "You live your life, I'll live my life." We moved 100 miles south. Long story short, I gave her $40,000 and I filed for custody for all 3 boys. We started a 3-year legal battle that cost me $65,000. During this legal battle, she requested a full psychiatric evaluation, and the evaluator asked me, "Do you attracted to men?" I was very truthful. I said, "Yes." "Do you want to be a woman?" I was very truthful. I said, "Yes, I do." Rachel goes in there and says she found pictures of me wearing women's clothing. She went on to say he admitted to wanting to live life as a woman. She was very concerned. I had a secret life going on. So this court battle lasts 3 years, $65,000, and it finally goes in front of the judge in August of 2007 in Van Nuys, California. The judge is up there on her bench and says, "In all my years, this is the most difficult case I've ever decided. But in all my years, I have never seen such an incredible and caring father." And right then and there gave me full legal physical custody of all 3 boys. The judge ordered her to pay me child support. Never took a penny, was nothing to do with it. Curtis moves back into the house and everything's fantastic and the boys are loving living together. Everything is going well. Then one weekend she says, "Can I take Jeffrey and Curtis down to visit Grandma down in Southern California?" I said, "Yeah." Me and Bradley were up in Santa Maria working. Phone call, another car accident. Curtis and his mother were broadside and the car flipped several times. They're airlifted to UCLA. Get to UCLA, he's released to me and the mother's in ICU for about a week. She comes out of hospital, she stays with us during her recuperation. She said, "Let's get back together, Jeff." And I said, "No, I need to transition." She said, "Let me back in the house and we'll do it together as a family." So I let her back in the house and we started making arrangements. I rented a 5-bedroom house. She was in 1 bedroom, I was in another, and we started planning on my transition. She says, "You could tell the older 2 boys, all I ask is we wait till our youngest is 12 years old. He's too young." So the time came. She goes, "I will take the kids to Texas while you stay behind in California and do your transition, and we'll start working together." She goes, "You can tell the older boys you have my full 100% support." The time came. She graduated. Jeffrey graduated. They moved to Texas while I stayed behind in California and started planning my transition. I went through a really, really dark period, but I finally made up my mind I have to transition. Flew to Texas to be with my family on Christmas 2009. During a long conversation, I came out to my eldest son. I said, "Your dad is going to transition." He says, "You have my 100% support." About a month later, I came up to my middle son on the telephone. He says, "You know what, Dad? You've always been there for me. You have my 100% support." The day after Christmas, I took my youngest son, Curtis, down the street. And I said, your dad is going away for a little while. He's crying, going, why, Dad? I thought you were coming to live with us. And I said, no, me and your mom had made arrangements. I'm a phone call away. Things are going to happen. I have to do this. Your mom is fully supportive. So it was the most difficult decision I ever made. But I wouldn't be here, and I have the full 100% support of their mother. Came back to California, spring of 2010. I threw away all my boy clothes, and I started living full-time as a girl. People would point at me, laugh at me, make fun of me, ridicule me. But the thought of suicide never, ever entered my mind again. But I didn't like living that way with a penis between my legs. So I start calling Dr. Bauer saying, bump up my surgery, bump up my surgery. She bumps it up to September 17, 2010. I fly to this little place in Trinidad, Colorado. It was called the sex change capital of the world. During a 7.5-hour surgery, Dr. Bowers turns my penis into my vagina, gives me my breast implants, and does what's called a trach shave. She cut off my Adam's apple. That was the day I became me. That was the day I hatched from that cocoon. That was me. I finally am myself. During the procedure, the doctor unpacked me, said, you cannot have sex for 6 weeks. And I said, who am I going to have sex with? Well, at 5 weeks, I met a guy. We messed around. And for the first time in my life, I made love correctly 6 weeks and a day after my surgery. These are pictures of my transition as I've gone along. But I made love for the first time 6 weeks and a day after my surgery. I'm a father of 3. I've slept with 40, 50, 60 different women. For the first time in my life, it felt correct. Right position, right body part, cute Hispanic guy, tattoos. Would have been the best sex I ever had if it lasted more than 10 seconds, right? So you can see I'm moving along these pictures just as I transitioned. This picture made the front cover of a human sexuality textbook out of Berlin, Germany. That was in Ireland. You can just see the different styles of hair color, the different clothing. This is the way transgender people transition. They experiment, they learn, they explore. This is what happens to the transgender community. And now here we are in 2021. So I hope I haven't bored you, and now we're getting to the meat of the story. We're going back to 2012. Me and my son Jeffrey are living together in a condominium in California. Him and his girlfriend are back and forth to Texas. He's fully supportive. He's my biggest ally. My son Bradley comes out to California, looks at me, and goes, you look a little bit different, Dad. He's fully 100% supportive me. Like I said, we're now 2012. My youngest son is 12 years old. It's time we tell him. I start calling their mother and saying, Rachel, it's time we tell Curtis. Suddenly she cuts off all phone communication. I'm emailing her. Jeffrey can't get hold of his mother or brothers. I'm texting her. I have no idea what's going on. I'm sending her registered letters. No response. I buy a plane ticket to fly to Texas. Before that plane ticket arrives, I receive a letter from the state of Texas. Rachel has filed suit to remove my parental rights. My choice of a lifestyle is dangerous to our youngest child. I flip out. I start calling an attorney, and every attorney saying $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. I say I have full custody. We have an agreement. They're saying this is Texas, Jessica. I don't know what to tell you. Finally, I find an attorney named John McCall. He says I know her attorney. Yours is an open and shut case. Wire me $2,000. You have full custody. You have an agreement. We went in front of Judge Scott Becker. My attorney says Jessica has full agreement when Curtis is 12 years old. The judge would not allow one word of that document in the courtroom. My attorney goes, Jessica could have come any time of the last 2 years and taken Curtis home. She doesn't want to take him back to California. She just wants to be part of his life again. The judge says she doesn't have custody anymore. Her custody is now null and void. During this long day at court, her attorney says on the stage, Jessica has taken the most selfish acts a parent could take to change their gender from man to woman. Jessica is no longer Curtis's dad because I am now a woman. This is the actual court transcript. We are asking that Dr. Ben Albritton to do a full psychiatric evaluation on Jessica at her cost. Long day at court, the judge goes, 2 orders. You're allowed to speak to your child via the telephone anytime you want when you come back to California. But if you tell your child, you will not tell your child that you have transitioned. In fact, if you tell your child that you have transitioned, you may be incarcerated. In fact, if you tell your child that you have transitioned, you don't have to worry about forking over any money. You are going to jail. He's telling me if I tell my own child that I transitioned, he's going to come to California and throw me in jail, even though I had full custody and I had an agreement. I want you to wrap your head around this. In Texas, you can be on trial for a murder and get bail. This judge is saying if you're transgender, that is worse than murder. This same judge reduced a lady that executed her husband's bail from $1.4 million to $140,000. She got out of jail for $14,000. He says, second order, it is ordered that Dr. Ben Albritton is to do a full psychiatric evaluation on me on before January 31st. If I don't do this, I go to jail. They give me his business card. I start calling him, said I'm here in Texas. Turns out he says he's a professor in biblical counseling. He came back and said, as soon as we can do it is Monday, November 27th, and it's $3,000. Came back to California, wired him his money, sent him his plane ticket, bought my car rental, did the whole thing, and I started really doing research on Dr. Ben Albritton. He's a graduate of Biola University, the most theological university in the United States. Long story short, I fly back to Texas and I go visit him. I do a couple days of evaluation, and now we're getting to the end of January. He spent a couple days with me, and then we're getting to the end of January, and I'm calling my attorney, say, John, where the hell's my evaluation? He goes, leave it alone, Jessica, they know. And I said, no, I want to see my child. It's supposed to be due in tomorrow, 2 days. I want to see my child. My attorney goes, leave it alone. I said, F you, John. On January 30th, I started calling the evaluator. I said, where the hell's my evaluation? The secretary's, I'll get back to you. Very end of the day, she called me. She goes, hey, Jessica, I have your evaluation. I said, great. When do I get to see it? She goes, two things. You don't get to see it. It's up to the judge to allow you to see it, and your difficult case, it's an extra $1,500. My attorney was pissed. He said, wire them the money. So on January 31st, I received a 22-page document back. January 31st, in the interest of Curtis Butterworth. Well, what it does say, concerns about neglect by Ms. Lynn were not substantiated by this evaluation. On the contrary, collateral sources describe me as a devoted, conscientious, and caring parent. This right-wing evaluator came back and said, I should start seeing my child, preparing for the child through a psychologist for the reunification. My attorney says, you've done it, Jessica. You get to see your child again. He goes, tomorrow I will call her attorney and the judge to see when you can start seeing your child. You jumped through every damn hoop, Jessica. You get to see your child. Took them 2.5 weeks to make a 5-minute phone call. 2.5 weeks later, my attorney calls me. I said, when do I get to see my son, John? He goes, it's not that easy. I said, what do you mean it's not that easy? He goes, they're fighting their own evaluation, and the judge is allowing it. He says it's going to cost you another $200,000 to $400,000 to ever speak to your little boy again. I need another $20,000. I start calling ACLU, Lambda Legal Transgender Law Center. Nobody will help me. And my attorney pulls himself off the case. I had no idea, nothing to do. I could not do anything. I was desperate. I had no idea. Nobody will help me. So my little brother finally steps in. He goes, I'm a civil rights attorney in California. He goes, if you lose, I cannot help you file an appeal. The ACLU will jump in. So we spent night after night, day after day working on my case. Went into court, said, here's your court-ordered evaluation. The judge would not allow one word of that documentation in the courtroom. During this long day at court, Rachel stands under oath saying, I never knew Jeff wanted to be a woman. We pull out an LA Superior Court document. The judge reads it, said, not admitted in this courtroom. During this long day at court, the judge goes, go home and I'm going to email you my answer. Said, no, I phoned here one way. I want to see my child. I've done nothing wrong. The judge goes, don't disrespect the court, Miss Lynn. Go home. So we flew home that Monday night. That Friday, I turned on my computer. Jessica Lynn, your parental rights have been terminated. This judge told my little boy he's never allowed to call me, never allowed to say, Merry Christmas, Dad. Hey, Dad, I hit a home run in my game today. I am never allowed to say, Happy birthday, Curtis. Never allowed to say, Merry Christmas, Curtis. I am never allowed to speak to my little boy ever again because I am who I am. 2 evaluations, I had full custody. But because I am who I am, this judge said I'm never allowed to speak to him ever again. I want you to wrap your head around this. This is the same time frame, August 2012. 31 states allow rapist custody and visitation rights. You get raped, you keep that child, he goes to jail, gets out of custody, and he has visitation rights. A rapist has more rights than I do. And this includes the state of Texas. They call it legitimate rape. A fucking rapist has more rights than I do. Think about that, please. This is discrimination in the United States. This isn't 1910, this isn't 1970, this is 2013. My paperwork went everywhere, ACLU, Lambda Legal. Later that year, I come home from work on Christmas Eve. There in the mailbox, yellow envelope. From her attorney to me, there's a stamp on the envelope, Saturday, 21st of December. I open it up, sitting in my car. What could it be? Dated December 20th. Please find an enclosed copy of the order of termination. They mailed this to me to say, fuck you, Jessica, you will never have a Christmas with your little boy. I sat there in my car shaking, crying, going, why would they do that? Why? Why? They didn't stop there. On page 4 of that same document, it is ordered that my name be removed from the birth certificate of this child. It was signed and dated September 20th, but they waited to Christmas Eve to say, Merry Christmas, Jessica. You will never see your little boy again. In fact, this judge went as far as erasing my existence out of my little boy's life because I am transgender. Please think about that for one moment. My paperwork went everywhere across the United States. Later that year, my phone rings and it says so-and-so from Department of Justice. I talked to her and she says, sorry, Jessica, we've done a major investigation. This judge was extremely prejudicial towards you. They said there's not much you can do about it, but she said they cannot take your name off your child's birth certificate. Turns out that this is the first and only time in U.S. history that a biological parent has been erased of a child's birth certificate. Never happened before, and it's never happened since. This is the first and only time. This judge went as far as taking my name off my child's birth certificate. But as I said, the beauty of the world lies in the diversity of its people. I sure as hell don't want to live in a world where everybody looks the same, everybody dresses the same. We all marry the opposite sex, we're attracted to the opposite sex. That's not what kind of world I want to live in. I think the diversity of the people is a gorgeous, gorgeous thing. I don't want my son to look like everybody else. I don't want some mold for my child to grow up into. I want my child to be unique, to have his own thoughts, to have his own mind. That's what I want. You see, I'm happy with who I am. I've lived a very incredible and interesting life. My problem isn't with me. My problem is with society not accepting me for being me. I'm happy being who I am, but I don't like the world taking my child away from me because I am who I am. Because I don't fit into that acceptable amount of difference, I have become just another secret. As much as a stranger to my son as I am to the millions of other lighted houses I fly over in the night sky. And this is all because people like that judge in Texas, people that believe that some differences are too much, that some of those lights in the night sky deserve to be distinguished. Please think about that. Please, please, really, really think about that. So this is what it is. Somebody asked me, why do I call this tour Chasing Dreams? My dreams are not accomplished. My dreams are to educate as many people as we can. You guys are the next leaders. You're the next business owners. You're the next politicians. And this is the way we need to all continue to change the world through education. So as I said, my story is a very, very powerful story. I have used my story to help businesses, to help companies, to help things. I only had an hour and 15 minutes and then my computer screwed up a little bit. But these are a few things that there is a lot of good going on with businesses around the world. Did you know that Fortune 500 companies, 91 prohibit discrimination about sexual orientation? These are the top 5 companies in the world, Fortune 500. 3/4 of them, 83%, prohibit discrimination based on gender identity compared to just 3 in the year 2000. Think about this. People are leaning towards more more equality. Fortune 10 companies, all 10 prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation. It's better for business. And they all 10 prohibit discrimination based on gender identity. Even insurance companies are finding that study covering transgender healthcare, it's cheaper to let somebody transition. There's so much benefit to letting transgender people and supporting transgender people. So as we come into a little close tonight, these are a list of things that you can do to help your community. Do not tolerate disrespect, whether it's hurtful language, remarks, or jokes. Call it out if it's inappropriate. Seek out other help who will support you in this effort, right? These are ways you can support your local community. When you become a business owner, when you become a leader, you may be something in your classroom, maybe president of a club. Respect pronouns. Not sure which pronoun someone used? Ask. There's nothing wrong with asking. You don't ask for preferred pronouns, you ask for pronouns. When you say preferred, it suggests that it's minimizing. It suggests that you're using it as that they have a choice, you know? And if you make a mistake, apologize and move on. Don't jump all over it. Be patient with those questioning their gender identity. A person who's questioning their gender identity may shift back and forth as they try to find what fits best for them. As I said, it's very, very fluid. There's no black and white. And please, please remember that gender and sexuality are not black and white. They're really, really not. Listen to trans voices. Keep an open mind and heart to the experience of different transgender people. They're experts in their own lives, and one of the most important part of being an ally is learning what it means to be transgender. These are all little tips to make it better in your community. Don't assume you can tell someone is transgender. Transgender and non-binary people don't look a certain way. It may not appear trans or non-binary. Indeed, many trans non-binary live most of their lives with very few people knowing their status. Most people when I travel all over the world, most people that have no clue that I'm transgender. I'm very, very lucky that way, knock on wood, because I'm going to places like Turkey, to Israel, to Cyprus, to South Africa, to Ukraine. These are some of the countries that I go to. This is why I'm very, very lucky. But you don't know, and you keep your assumptions to yourself. And I really, really, really hope you do that. Be careful about confidentiality and disclosure and outing. If somebody, one of your employees, or somebody that you work with, asks you to share their identity with you, do not tell others. This is an invasion of privacy, but it can also have devastating consequences. Use gender neutral language. This is the biggest piece of advice that you can say when you come into business. Use everyday words that ungendered, right? By using terms like hi guys, or addressing a group, or welcome ladies and gentlemen. We assume genders and exclude people. How about hi friends or welcome folks? These are the greatest things. And if you want, send me an email. I'll give you my email at the end. I will send you all the different information to help it make it better for you. Keep it appropriate. Don't ask trans folks about their genitals. You know how many times I get asked about if I've had my surgery, do I have a penis or vagina, when I'm on an airplane in an Uber talking to somebody? This happens all the time. It's not anybody's business unless I'm going to sleep with them. It really, really isn't. And don't police public restrooms. Gender variant people may not match the sign of the restroom, and if there are no gender bathrooms available, offer to accompany a transgender person in the bathroom, the buddy system, they're less venerable. So this is a little bit what I do. I do training. This was an hour-and-a-half session. I do apologize for going really, really quick. But now what we're going to do is we're going to open up for question and answers. And as either Courtney or Kelley said, there's not a question I will not answer. I am extremely, extremely open. I hope you enjoyed today's fun session.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I'm always just so, I feel like it's such a privilege that you're willing to share so much about your life. And I really hope that folks will submit some questions in the Q&A or the chat so we can get those. While we're waiting for those to come in, I didn't know if you, I appreciate that you're willing to share your resources. Are there other places where people can go to read more about the transgender community or learn more so they can be more informed moving forward?
There's a lot of good books, and I don't know them off the top of my head because I get a little brain dead loopy after a presentation, but there are a lot of good books. The Kinsey Institute has some information. Uh, HRC, Human Rights Campaign. There's a lot of really good support groups out there that have a lot of information. A lot of local transgender support groups, and I will email you a list uh, to help with that kind of stuff, and I'll send you a list. And somebody wrote, "How can businesses help and show that they're welcoming?" Here in England, the NHS does this. They wear LGBT colors. They wear a little badge that says NHS and it shows the LGBT things. Have information around. I mean, you don't have to put the whole thing, but it just depends on what you are, what kind of business you are. But little simple things on your business card. Jessica Lynn, she, her, and I don't know why mine didn't pop up because I had it registered. I don't know why that is. I don't know. But you have it on your business card. You have it on your name tag. Your pronouns, she, her, they, them, he, him. You know what I'm saying? This is a great way to show people that you are welcoming to the transgender community. You're going to come across people that are gender non-conforming, gender fluid. Be open and let them talk to you and feel comfortable with them. If you don't know how to identify and you want to have a conversation, there's nothing wrong with asking them quietly, politely, and nicely. There's so many different ways a business can help. I have pamphlets in my computer, and then you send me an email, Jessica Lynn 347. I have little things of how to make your office more welcoming. From posters, from pamphlets, so many different pieces of information, and I will absolutely love to send you something.
Thank you. We had another question of, do you ever have compassion fatigue? And if so, how do you manage that?
Do I have any, say that one?
Do you ever get compassion fatigue? You're sort of sharing your story and doing all of this for your community. So does that ever happen to you? And if so, how do you manage that?
Fatigue?
Yep. Or compassion fatigue.
Coffee. No, I haven't. I have not been fatigued at this. There's days, I was recently, before COVID hit, I spoke at UCLA. I spent the night. I hopped on a plane. I flew 16 hours to Dubai. I am one of those people that cannot sleep on a plane. I just read and read and read, right? I get to Dubai. I spent 8 hours in Dubai, then another 8-hour flight to Johannesburg, South Africa. I sat in Johannesburg for 7 hours. Then I flew to East London. I get to East London, I get to my hotel, I sleep, I get up, and the next day I did 3 days of 6-hour training courses for the NHS, for the psychology professors there. That's fatigue, but when I'm on stage, I get adrenaline and it makes me feel good. Here I couldn't see any faces, right? And that's part of the thing by doing these. When I'm in front of people, I see the faces, I see the reaction, I see that I'm helping people understand. I get emails. Please feel free to email me. If you have a question, if you don't like me, feel free to email me. This is how I learn, okay? I want to make these things really, really well so you guys can open up, and I want to make this for the business community better. I want to know where you want to learn, but yeah, I get fatigue on that, but I've never had that type of fatigue, I do get tired. Like I said, I'm in England, it's 11:30 at night here. Next week I do something, I think, I don't know, to San Diego or to Chapman, and I start at 1:00 in the morning. You know what I'm saying? And so
it's clear that it really gives you life to be able to do this, and that it's really the passion that you have, and I think that makes it that much more powerful as we get to learn, because again, that it's that personal story. We had another comment. So someone wanted your thoughts on sort of how the Christian community approaches LGBTQ population. So their thought was that maybe Christianity manipulates people into discriminating against these folks, or some of those beliefs can lead to that discrimination. So I don't know if you had any thoughts on that.
there's different, you saw how many religions there are. There's different forms of Christianity, different bases of Christianity. Most Christian groups, I speak at a lot of churches around the world. I do a lot here in the UK. Most religions, most Christianity religions are open and accepting to the transgender and LGBT community. There's a certain fringe group that isn't open and accepting, but they use the same thing that they're doing right now against the black community 60, 70, 80 years ago. You know, they did it against, they used the Bible for slavery. Okay, that's what they used. So no matter what, you're not going to fix some of these people. And what usually happens, they end up having a transgender son, a transgender friend, or something like that. And then it kind of opens their mind. I have a good friend of mine. Her name is Debbie Jackson. Her child, she's in Kansas. She was a huge hardcore right winger, really Bible thumping Baptist lady, right? And they had a child that transitioned, that wanted to transition. They transitioned. She transitioned at 4 years old. She's on the front cover of, the young girl's on the front cover of National Geographic, named Avery Jackson a few years ago, little pink-haired girl. The mother is now one of the biggest allies in the world towards the transgender community. She speaks to Congress. She works with the American government right now. So people are becoming more and more open. The people that are discriminatory is becoming the minority, and it's becoming a very fine minority. You know, you hear it on the news, and you hear all these huge, big, loud people. You had it last week, but those people are becoming the minority. They really, really are. You know, so be supportive, and this is where it usually happens: is somebody in the family and somebody. You know, you're still going to have people discriminate, but this is what it is. You know.
Well, and it sounds like that comes back to even what you've been doing. It's that sometimes what changes people's mind is that personal connection.
Yeah.
I know someone, or I have a loved one that's going through this, and that's what really helps us develop that empathy for people who are different than us. I've heard you say before, and so I'm hoping you can say a little bit more about it now, just about sort of your willingness to speak to people, if people run into someone who is thinking about transitioning, how they can be that ally, how they can kind of connect people to you or to the community, how you kind of want to be a resource for folks.
Yeah, this is my email address. Like I said, you can find me at jessicalynn.co.uk, or jessicalynn347@gmail. After I usually do a presentation like this, I get 2 or 3 emails saying, can I do a Zoom with you? I've done it at IU with students that have come back and they've said that they're transgender, or my sister's transgender. My child is coming out. How do I do it? Feel free to connect me with anybody. Your sister has a cousin that's doing it. Feel free. I am a resource. You want more information, I will send you. I will send you a stack of information, how to be opening towards your businesses, how to help businesses become more welcome. Sometimes it may take me a day or 2 or 3 to get to you, but I will answer every single email. I always do. But I do want to help as many people as I can, and I have no problem doing one-on-one Zoom talks with however many people want to do a one-on-one Zoom talk with me. You know, doesn't cost you a penny, doesn't cost you anything. You know, it's just me doing this. As I said, I've dedicated, because they took my child from me, I've dedicated my life to saying I never, ever want to see somebody else lose their child ever again in the world to being transgender or gender non-conforming or being gay or whatever, just for any other reason. Make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I appreciate you really kind of articulating that and being a resource for our community, you know, as we learn more and expand. Thank you so much for your time and your passion and sort of your vulnerability and your story today. As we kind of wrap up, as we're coming close to time, I also just want to mention, so as anyone has heard this, if you think that there is some follow-up presentation that can be made, some conversation that we can facilitate, something else that you would like to see either in one of your student organizations or classrooms or in the Kelley community, please feel free to contact either Courtney or I. We've already talked to Jessica about potentially doing some additional, more specific trainings or other conversations. And so we're more than welcome to help be the conduit for that and help shape those things. So if this has sparked some passion for you, or you can think of another place where we can get this message out, we absolutely want to do this. I know Jessica has been very clear that if she could talk to every single student at IU, she would. And so please just keep that in mind as well. As you're hearing this, you can reach out to Jessica, obviously, but Courtney and I are here to help as well. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And thank you again, Jessica, for your time.
No, thank you. I've really, really had a great time. I don't see anybody, so I don't know how people are reacting. But so I don't know. Sometimes I can see people, and and um, I can't see anybody here, so I don't know what the feeling is. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. And as I said, please feel free to comment. If you didn't like it, feel free to comment. I just don't know. I want to make sure that I'm reaching everybody. I only had an hour and a half to do this, and so I try to cram as much as I could in, and I hope I didn't go too fast. So.
We've got some thank yous and some people who like the ideas and things. So know that even if you can't see folks, that people seem to have really enjoyed your time. So thank you again so much. And thank you, everybody. And I hope that you all have a safe and healthy evening.
Thank you, you guys. Be good and have a wonderful, wonderful nighttime for me.
I hope you go to bed soon.
I know.